A great pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Paul Raffile. He's going to talk about sextortion, and he's a fantastic speaker on this issue. Something we've been very interested to hear from him before, so and really welcome him. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you. All right, how's everybody doing today? Good. How's everybody doing today? All right, good, not for long, because this topic is going to get heavy pretty quick. This topic is about financial sextortion and the impact that it's having on youth and minors right now. So a little bit of background just on myself. I'm an Intel analyst. I've been an Intel analyst for over 10 years. My first job out of college was tracking ISIS on social media. You all know who ISIS is, right? And then, yeah, from there moved on over to the private sector in corporate America and was doing intel and investigations on the corporate side. This story starts a little bit over a year ago when one of my friends contacted me. All my friends kind of know me as the digital investigations, online investigations guy. And he had an embarrassing problem, a predicament. Someone who he did not know was impersonating a female his age on social media. They had been chatting for several days. This individual who he thought he was speaking with, it got increasingly flirtatious. She sent a photo, an explicit photo, and asked that he return with his own. And as soon as he did it, that's when the blackmail began. Hey, I have your nudes and everything needed to ruin your life. I've screenshotted all your friends, your followers, your family, and I'm going to get you expelled from school. I'm going to just completely ruin your life unless you pay me $500 right now. And so my friend came to me because he didn't know what to do. Does he block the criminal and hope this goes away? Does he pay and hope it goes away? Or is that just going to make it worse? So I started digging into this and I started looking online at what was happening. Who was talking about this? Who was being targeted by this type of scam? And what I found was probably the most depressing part of the internet, where victims were coming together and saying, hey, this just happened to me. And many of these victims were having suicidal thoughts. More empirical research has actually come out recently stating that more than half of victims, even adult victims of financially motivated sextortion, feel suicidal tendencies at some point during their post-victimization experience. And this was, of course, very sad, but I wanted to research, what are these criminals doing? Who are they? And what I started to realize very quickly was something very strange. All these victims were, from all across the world, all across the nation, but they were getting the same exact messages, the same threats, down to the same typos. And it was very clear, at least beginning to start to become clear, that this was organized crime. These weren't individualized cases and individual victims and individual perpetrators. This was a crime that was happening at scale using the same scripts down to the same exact typos. And so we'll get into who is doing this and what has happened, but I want to talk about some of the impact of what has happened from financial sextortion over the past 2-3 years. Does anyone know who this is? Yell it out, anyone? No? This is Jordan DeMay. He's a 17-year-old from Michigan. He was approached on Instagram, the same exact story, by someone who he thought was a girl his age. She started the conversation, became flirtatious. She sent a photo first and then asked him to do the same. And as soon as he did, that's when the blackmail began. Jordan paid, I believe it was $300. It was all the money that he had in his Venmo account, I believe, at the time. But they still wanted more after that, and the threats kept getting worse. They were going to get him expelled from school. They were going to get his scholarship taken away. All these, terrible things. Leak the photo to all his friends, family, etc. Jordan was dead within 6 hours of first contact from the scammer. This is James Woods, another 17-year-old from Ohio. During the span of 19 and a half hours from when he was first contacted by his scammer, he received over 200 threatening messages and died by suicide within 19 hours. Gavin Guffey, the same story, the same format, the same script, the same methods. 17-year-old from South Carolina. After Gavin died by suicide, then his dad and his family members started getting blackmailed too. Pay me or else I'm gonna release your son's photos to the world. His criminal actually sent a text message to Gavin's dad on what would have been Gavin's 18th birthday. And that text said, "Did I tell you that your son begged for his life?" Laughing face emoji. Carson Cleland was 12 years old from Canada. It happened on Snapchat. Like there's no age verification to even get on some of these sites. So, you know, by their own terms of service, he shouldn't have even been on there. That platform should not have allowed this to happen. Timothy Barnett, same thing. He was being forced to pay $35 via Cash App every day until he ran out of money, ran out of options, and he was found in his front yard one morning by his family. Braden Marcus was contacted on Instagram at 11:01 p.m. He died by suicide at 11:27 p.m. 26 minutes. That's how fast these crimes are. Dinal Dialwas, a 16-year-old from London, a couple years ago, the same story, blackmailed via Snapchat, asked to pay, I believe, £100 initially, paid what he had, they asked for more, he didn't have any options left, and he died by suicide. Murray Dowie from Scotland, 16 years old. I should also say, all of these kids, they were living their best lives. They had no history of mental health issues, depression. These were entirely sudden, unexpected deaths that their families did not know what happened until sometimes months later when there was some sort of investigation and they, recovered what was on the device. It's happening in Australia too, as well as Canada. And so when I saw that all these cases were happening, and it was the same story over and over again, it was the same apps over and over again, it was the same script over and over again, I wanted to get the word out there because this was massive. Like, we needed to do something to stop this. So I published research. I partnered with the Network Contagion Research Institute, and we put together a report last year called A Digital Pandemic: Uncovering the Role of Yahoo Boys in the Surge of Social Media-Enabled Financial Sextortion Targeting Minors. And within this report, we kind of estimated, looking at the Google searches for things that victims would be searching, things like help on being sextorted, and we saw that these searches were also closely related to other searches like how to delete an Instagram account, how to block someone on Snapchat, which actually kind of gave us a really good picture of what was happening. After our research came out, then the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children came out with their data, which had the same spikes at the same locations and the same magnitude, which pretty much corroborated what we were seeing. Back in 2021, there were only 139 cases of financial sextortion targeting minors in the United States. By 2023, that number was 26,000. That's an 18,000% increase in the span of 2 years. Literally insane and out of control. 90% of victims, according to NCMEC, are males between 14 and 17, and they're now getting 556 reports of financial sextortion every week. Remember, it was 139 every year, in 1 year, back in 2021. Now it's 556 per week. Crazy. During the same time period, up till now, we know that there have been at least 47 confirmed teen suicides that have been publicly reported and confirmed to be related to financial sextortion. I believe that number is potentially 5 to 10 times that, just of cases that we don't know, that they've never unlocked the phone and we don't know what happened. Some data from the UK, Greater Manchester is reporting a 2,700% increase. Other parts of the UK, very much exponential growth as well for blackmail and sextortion offenses targeting youth. When we started this research, we started to see that some criminals were being indicted and extradited in this, but we didn't have a whole lot of data at the time. So we had the man on the left who was arrested in Nigeria for the suicide of a 14-year-old Canadian boy. In the middle here, we have the criminals who extorted Jordan Deme. And over on the right-hand side, we have Olamide Shanu, who is a Nigerian national who is currently being held in a jail in London awaiting extradition to the US. At the time, his indictment said that he had extorted hundreds, and the total amount was $2.5 million. Investigators are now saying it's thousands and over $10 million as part of his extortion scheme. So I started to look online, what's actually happening here. And when I went to Google, and I saw that the phrase "how to blackmail someone with pictures" on Google search was trending up 850% in Nigeria at the time that we published the report. And now with all these kind of pieces and multiple clues hinting back to Nigeria, I was like, why is it pointing to Nigeria? What is happening here? Why are most of the criminals coming from this geography? And what we saw when I started to look at Nigerian cybercriminal groups online, these scammers call themselves Yahoo boys. Yahoo comes from the free yahoo.com email addresses that they had 20 years ago that they were using to do the Nigerian prince email scams. Well, they've evolved since then. They went from the Nigerian prince email scams to romance scams to crypto scams, now to financial sextortion. And they're on TikTok right now promoting this scam, giving the formats, the methods, the scripts away. They're bragging about their riches. This script that we found on YouTube was the exact script that was used in Jordan Demay's death, down to the exact same typos. This had existed on YouTube for 3 years. Facebook groups, more than 20,000 members in multiple groups about these blackmailing, filled with scammers, where they would just talk about how to commit sextortion and how to get rich doing it. Top 3 platforms mentioned by minors in victim reports are Instagram, Snapchat, and Wiz. We'll talk about why. I'm going to breeze through this because I don't have too much time, but this is kind of the anatomy of a social media scam. The teens are often targeted first on Instagram. Then they're asked to move to Snapchat because Snapchat, it's known for disappearing photos, and teens feel it's less risky to do things on Snapchat. Of course, they're taking screenshots and the blackmail happens. In the US, Cash App is the #1 payment processor where that is actually being used in these extortion payments as well. These criminals are even going so far as to talk about which high schools and which communities to target online. They're oftentimes talking about how to target different football teams and hockey teams and different sports teams, so that way they can add everybody from that team. It makes their account look authentic because now they have 20 mutual friends or followers in common, and it also gives them a good target list to run through. Beyond the threats of just, I'm gonna leak your photos and ruin your life, they'll even pretend to be texting from a different number, pretending to be the FBI, and now the kid is under investigation. Just all sorts of different things. They'll put together different photo collages that has the teen's photo and then a caption that says, this teen was sexting a 6-year-old or raped a minor. All these allegations that just have so much detrimental effects to these victims. And the comments section of these areas are even worse because it's, teach me how to BM, teach me how to be part of this scam, and these are active today, and of course they're sharing their riches and things like that. The criminals who are doing this, they're bragging about it online, they think they will never get caught, and most of them are probably right. The extradition process is timely, and they've been doing this for multiple years, and nobody seems to be arresting a lot of them. We've only extradited less than 10 people, and there's tens of thousands doing this. And 2 weeks ago, again, the Yahoo boys promoting the blackmail scam went viral on TikTok. There were multiple videos that received over 1 million views, 20,000 comments on this one particular video here. It's still up today, even though I reported it to TikTok 2 weeks ago, and Australian media covered it a week or 2 ago. Who knows why it's still there. That same week that these videos went up, 2 American teens died by suicide. I was one of the commenters here. I asked him for his blackmail method and script. He messaged it to me directly. So I know that 20,000 others got that same material as well. And they're all out there committing sextortion and blackmail scams as we talk today. So I also wanted to raise awareness once we put this research out there. And Bloomberg did a fantastic article. This was the cover of their April 2024 magazine that has these threatening messages and a very good story inside if you give Bloomberg a read. And when I started to kind of put all these pieces together, I thought to myself, this really should be like a New York Times investigation. This has to get out there. So we got it in the New York Times front page above the fold and had this story in the New York Times last year as well. When these, when we first started looking at this, these scammers only had in total about 500,000 views. So my goal was to educate and promote this. If 500,000 criminals are going to know how to do this, I want 500,000 cyber defenders to know how to counteract this. We've done a little bit better than the criminals, and so far I think this message has reached somewhere around 35 to 40 million people so far across national news. And interestingly, on LinkedIn a little while ago, I got this photo in my DMs saying, did you know that the United Nations is using your LinkedIn posts to train law enforcement officers? I said, no. So that was a pretty cool thing. I also wanted to make sure, of course, an element of this is the criminal element in disrupting and prosecuting the criminals. So last year, we organized a webinar with all the stakeholders that can make an impact: Department of Justice, FBI, Meta, Snapchat. Everybody you see here was in this webinar that we hosted. And more importantly, we had the parents of some of these victims there too, talking about the impact of what happened to their family and how we can make sure this never happens again. This was, I think, such an impactful moment. It was the first time that everybody, I think, was in the same room together on the same page. And the job offer that I had received from Meta at that time, which was I had accepted, as soon as that webinar ended, I got the phone call rescinding my offer to go work at Meta, presumably because they weren't so happy with me raising the fact that a whole bunch of sextortion is happening on Instagram at the moment. I've also gotten threats from some of these scammers. You can see, this one is threatening to kill 100 people this year, and I will rape your daughter and burn her to death. I don't have a daughter, but now the FBI has your IP address. And that was fun. And of course, there's another thing too. For-profit companies charging sextortion victims for assistance and using deceptive tactics to elicit payments. These are some legit companies out there too. I say legit, they're registered companies. I don't think they're legit companies. But just last week or 2 weeks ago, there was a fantastic USA Today investigation on who are these recovery companies that are making all these promises to make sure your photos get deleted or to get the scammer off your back. And I encourage you to read this article. They're definitely exploiting victims, in my opinion. If you go on Google right now, I don't know if it's in the UK or if it's just geofenced to the US, but in the US, if you go to Google and say, help, I'm being sextorted, help, I'm being blackmailed on Instagram, any variation of that, the top 10 results, 8 of them are going to be from the same company, a for-profit company, with multiple different identities, different URLs that they're using to make it seem like they're different companies. And it's thousands of dollars if you engage with them, and they'll say that they'll try to get your photos deleted from the scammer, but I don't buy it. And of course, there's the whole issue of making social media platforms safer. We talked about Meta, and I put out this content, 6 things Meta can do today to curb the surge of sextortion on Instagram. And they actually took some of these ideas. One of the things was classifying the Yahoo Boys under Meta's dangerous organizations policy. That gets them banned off the platform, and it basically enables a whole army of Meta analysts to go after this group at the same level that they try to deplatform ISIS or try to deplatform Al-Qaeda. So Yahoo Boys are now classified under the dangerous organizations policy. At the time, they removed close to 100,000 accounts, groups, profiles that were promoting scams and teaching people how to sextort and blackmail other people. Another thing too is those friends lists. I called on Meta. Why are teens' friends and follower lists public? Why not make these private by default for all accounts? And Meta met me halfway. They have decided to hide these results from accounts that they suspect might be sextortion criminals. It doesn't work most of the time, but maybe sometimes it does. Snapchat actually implemented 3 safety features I recommended, including things like if you block them on one account but they come back on a different account on the same device, they will also be blocked as well. things like that, just to keep people safer on Snapchat. And Wiz was actually removed from the Apple App Store and Google Play because of widespread sextortion happening on that platform. When it was ultimately brought back to the App Store, it had a whole bunch of new safety features, facial recognition, verification, all that stuff. And I had heard of no further sextortion incidents happening on Wiz on that platform after that. So I believe we prevented somewhere around 20,000 prevented sextortion incidents because of the new safety features they implemented. And of course, this is a financial crime, so stopping the money. These slides are available to you all, but this is the breakdown of where the money is going. Most of it is through Cash App and gift cards. Here are some red flags and recommendations. For anyone in the banking sector, you may want to do a quick screenshot or a photo of this, because I'm going to move on quickly. And these slides are available. I'll make them available so you guys can have them later too. Here's a quick reference guide for financial institutions. If you encounter a customer who may be dealing with sextortion, here are different ways that you can communicate with them and offer assistance. And does anyone here bank with Santander? Yeah, anybody? A few, okay. Very cool. On the Santander app just last week, they announced a whole new mini training module for families and customers on how to deal with blackmail or sextortion if they are dealing with this in their lives. So, thank you, Santander, for doing that. I will end with just some final thoughts here. This is the largest blackmail operation in human history. This is a public safety emergency, and it is a national security emergency too. The latest data from Snapchat shows that 51% of teens have been targeted by sextortion, and 23% have been victimized by sextortion. These are numbers that, a couple of years ago, nationwide studies were showing less than 5% of teens were victimized by this crime. Now it's a quarter of them. And Yahoo Boys have killed more American, UK, Canadian, and Australian kids in the past 2 years than ISIS ever has. We all know who ISIS is. We went to a whole big multi-billion-dollar war. And I think this is potentially even a bigger threat that we just don't even know about. So those are my thoughts. And thank you all for listening, and thank you so much for having me.